This episode is brought to you by Indeed. Stop waiting around for the perfect candidate. Instead, use Indeed sponsored jobs to find the right people with the right skills fast. It's a simple way to make sure your listing is the first candidates see. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs have 4 times more applicants than non-sponsored jobs. So go build your dream team today with Indeed. Get a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
This episode is brought to you by Stouffer's. Here comes 3-time juggling champion Natalia Rogers. She's juggling law school, her TA job. Oh, narrowly catches the laundry. What's that 4th ball? Parents unexpectedly showed up at dinner time? Is that too much for Natalia? Not with Stouffer's Chicken Alfredo and its mouth-watering mix of Asiago, Romano, and Parmesan. When you're juggling 4 things at once and the clock strikes dinner, think Stouffer's.
Hello and welcome to the Big-Legged Waistbenders podcast, episode number 2. Today we'll be covering the Senior Bowl with a special guest, Devin Jackson from the Philadelphia Inquirer. Hello, Devin. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on, and I'm looking forward to talking through the Senior Bowl, the first 2 days of practice. Obviously, one more practice to go. And so I was telling you off screen, this is like day number 8 in a row for me on the road. Went to the East-West Shrine game last week in Dallas, or I guess you can say Frisco, and obviously the ice storm hit there and kind of had me stuck there for an extra day, but able to get down to Mobile, able to watch these practices, and I get a chance to see these NFL draft prospects up close. You know, obviously between the 2 games, I would say Senior Bowl probably had the stronger talent pool, but overall, you know, getting to see these guys up close and personal and getting a closer look at some guys that maybe weren't on your radar, I think is always a good chance to really start the draft process off right and build some momentum heading into the NFL Combine at the end of February.
I love the Senior Bowl, man. It's such a showcase. Some years I can't even tell you who is in the Super Bowls, especially if the Eagles aren't in it. But I can tell you most of the prospects on the Senior Bowl, and I just love the whole thing. Like you said, I love seeing these guys in a different environment. I love seeing them get an opportunity to showcase their skills. And I kind of like the underdog element to it as well, because the most heralded prospects in the NFL draft tend to be underclassmen. So it's nice to see the seniors come out and showcase what they got and maybe cement their status or move up the board and maybe leapfrog some of these young whippersnappers who are ahead of them in the draft. So I love it. I just want to talk a little bit about yourself, your background. You joined the Inquirer in 22, write about college football. You cover the NFL draft. You also write some articles doing Eagles analysis. I remember an article recently before the 49ers game as a preview, and I thought you did a really nice job, so thank you for that.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, a lot of football in my portfolio, but yeah, college football was always number 1 for me, slash NFL draft. Those are 2 topics that I probably write about most. For me, when I came to Inquirer, I saw kind of a need for more college football coverage. Penn State was our big coverage area, big team to cover, even though it wasn't really a local team. They've had a lot of success with James Franklin as head coach, and obviously he's not there anymore, but at least when I started, he was. And obviously all the draft prospects Penn State were able to produce in that time frame. But also for me, I wanted to do more than that. You know, Temple once was a really good football program in the late 2010s, and obviously things haven't been the same since then. Recently got a new hire, Casey Keeler, and they're doing a better job recruiting the Philly area and surrounding areas, and it's really helped them get back on track. And then I think the biggest need for me to fill was a lot of Philly high school players, you know, go on and have really good careers. You think about Kyle Pitts and DeAndre Swift and Christian Barmore, who's going to be playing the Super Bowl, and players that grew up and played in Philly, Tyke Smith, Jeremiah Tryer Jr., who's on the Eagles, Jahad Campbell, grew up in the South Jersey area. A lot of these guys really stand out in high school, and then they go to college, and there's a big gap between that and when they ultimately get drafted. A lot of these players, you know, we end up catching up with them when it's a little too late, when they're getting ready to get drafted, and you know, people have kind of forgotten about them. So I kind of fill that gap in between it and kind of make it, I guess, my quote unquote beat, along with NFL draft stuff, which I've been doing since I got hired by the Inquirer. But even before that, I used to do it for free, and I've been following the NFL draft closely since the 2019 class.
Great. I love it. Let's talk about Senior Bowl week. There's been 2 practices in the books. The 3rd practice is today. The first 2 practices are usually where you get the most competition amongst the players. And the third day is a little bit of cleanup, and then the game a couple days later. So for the most part, I'd say we've seen most of the interesting parts of practice for the week. And I'm curious about some of your takeaways. We're going to go into categories just to make this a little fun. Let's start with the Hidden Gem Award. Who would be your small school standout from the event?
I think it has to be Tyron Montgomery, the John Carroll receiver from the Division III level. I think coming into the week, everyone was kind of wondering, would he be able to hang? Would he be able to have a really good week? And he's had one of the best weeks here. Just being able to create separation, at the line of scrimmage, and being able to get up and get vertical on throws down the field. Just everything that he's done this week, I think, has helped him. You just never really know when guys come in from the D3 level. I think the last one we saw was Quinn Miners from Wisconsin Whitewater, and obviously he's been a vital part of the Broncos offensive line, but you just never know the step up in competition if it's going to bring out the best in the player, or is he going to just not be ready for the moment. But he was certainly ready for the moment. Former basketball player, has played at John Carroll the last 2.5 years, and been an outstanding player. And just being able to come down to Mobile and be able to, on the first day, a guy like Colton Hood, who was getting a lot of first round buzz and at least top 50 buzz, and being able to win a route and make him lost at the separation point of all of it. I think Tyron Montgomery is a guy that you come away wanting to know more about, and wanting to get your hands on Division III film, even though that's probably so obscure to find. But so interesting for a guy like him to come in and be able to dominate and just feel like he belongs. I think the question now is, where does he end up going in the draft? And I think there's still some things to parse out. It feels like for sure that he's going to get a combine invite, get a chance to show his skills at the combine, which I think is going to be even bigger for his next step of his development and where he ultimately ends up. But he certainly has splashed. And if NFL teams didn't know about him coming into the week, they certainly are leaving the week trying to find a way to get that guy on their roster.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of tape requests for that for John Carroll University, where he's from. I know I don't have any all 22 from that, but I'm sure looking forward to watching it. He looked like he belonged right away. You saw a little bit of everything. You saw run after the catch, you saw hands, you saw ball skills, and you saw some acceleration, some separation. He looked like he belonged. That's for darn sure. After this week, as an Eagles fan, I'm feeling a lot better about day 2 at the wide receiver position. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I think you feel pretty good. I mean, obviously he wasn't the only one to have a really good week. I think Vinny Anthony from Wisconsin has also had a strong week. I think he's probably a slot only type player, but he's able to create some separation and has some explosiveness after the catch that you really are excited about. Malachi Fields, even though, I think some people are going to overhype him just a little bit coming out of the week because, he's that height, weight, length receiver that made some splashy catches during the Senior Bowl week, and people would tend to push up the board. I think overall he's probably a really good day 2 option and a player that you feel pretty good about being able to translate to the next level. Jacoby Lane had a good day 2 after an up and down day 1. I think he's a guy that's another potential day 2 player. And then one last player I wanted to shout out who I actually think could, be of interest to the Eagles, Josh Cameron, the receiver from Baylor. I'm not sure that he is going to last on the outside because his route running and separation skills are not as good as you'd like for a guy of his size. He's like 6'1", 230. But in terms of like being a potential power slot, being a guy that you feel confident being more of a possession guy, I think he fits that role, and someone that's really strong at the catch point. He really showed some really strong hands this week.
He certainly did. He certainly did. Very nice. Very nice. Who turned my head a little bit? Cyrus Allen from Cincinnati. I wasn't expecting that. Like, he wasn't one of the big names coming to the event. So I'm definitely interested in checking out his tape and also watching a little bit more of Kevin Coleman Jr. They both made a few splash plays as well. But I'd say that's a pretty darn good list you got there. And unfortunately, we may be having some needs at wide receiver this offseason that we're not accustomed to. So the more names we can throw into that day 2 hat for wide receiver and feel comfortable about it, the better. Any prospects where you need to do a tape recheck? you saw something different than expected and want to go back to the tape to watch more?
Yeah, I think Daryl Jackson Jr., Florida State defensive lineman, he was at Shrine and Senior Bowl. He's been kind of on an all-star game kick where he just keeps going and competing, going, competing. But the tape to me, um, was up and down. There were plays where he looked like a guy that could easily go top 100 and be a guy that maybe he's a three down defensive lineman. But there's other plays that you feel like there's a lot to be desired. He's getting washed down, getting washed out of plays on the run game, and just isn't as strong as a point attack that you would expect for a guy his size. So I think he's at the top of the list as a player that, you know, coming into the week, we'll see what happens. He certainly has all the measurables, but for him to actually do it, I think that was, an interesting development, at least for me, to see him up close and personal for assuming he practices on Thursday. This will be like the fifth practice I've seen him in the last 2 weeks. So certainly interesting in that perspective. I think JC Davis, the offensive tackle from Illinois, is someone that I want to go back and recheck because I was fairly intrigued by him in his college tape. Thought he was a solid tackle. Maybe he's a potential swing guy, but he had a really strong first day, able to handle some of the power that was thrown at him, had some decent feet against speed rushers. He was just a player overall that, I think coming into the week, I was fairly okay with him. I felt he was like third, fourth round range probably. And I think he still is coming out of the week, but I think just overall, he looked much better in person than he did on this college film. So I thought that was an interesting player for me. And then one more player I wanted to shout out was Rayshawn Benny, the defensive lineman from Michigan, who I didn't really see the type of explosiveness and disruptiveness on his college tape as I saw here down at the Senior Bowl, especially on day one. He was a guy to me that, kind of blended in a little bit. You knew about Derek Moore, and I wasn't really surprised about his rise this week because he's a really good pass rusher, and Derek Moore showed that once again. His teammate Rayshawn Benny, he's the guy that I want to go back to watch the tape and get a look at, and see what did I miss or did not see on that initial watch that he's able to potentially project to the NFL level.
All right, let's go into our next category, the Warrior Returns category. Prospect who's coming back from injury, fighting against the odds, and wants to show that he still has what it takes.
Yeah, this one, let me see. This one is interesting. I think it has to go to Caleb Banks, He was a guy that obviously missed a lot of the season, and you were coming in expecting him to dominate and set the week on fire, and that didn't quite happen on day one. It felt like he was thinking a little bit too much, kind of trying to really figure out his plan and the way he was going to attack as a pass rusher, especially. But then day two, all of that went out of the window. He was able to control reps at the point of attack in one-on-ones. He was disruptive in the team session. He was winning wrecking ball in general. I think he played one game early in the season and then played some games late for Florida, and it just was a lost season for them overall. But for Caleb Banks, he came into the season getting some serious hype, first round hype, and he's starting to recapture some of that hype. And just on the high weight, explosiveness, measurables, all those different things, he fits all what you're looking for in a three down defensive lineman. And, I think you feel pretty good about wanting to take him after what he showed in Mobile. And I wouldn't be surprised if he was one of those guys that shut it down after 2 days. He showed what he needed to show.
Very, very nice. So between him and Lee Hunter, who's made some splashes this week at defensive tackle, the defensive tackle class at the end of the first round and maybe early day two is looking a little better than some might have expected going in. So that's nice to see.
Yeah.
Nice to hear.
Yeah, it's possible both those guys get pushed up the board too, just because there's some other positions in this class that aren't as strong. And in the class where you have some uncertainty, I feel like you want to pick the guys you feel more certain about.
Absolutely. Let's go to our next category, table pounders. Someone you would love for the Eagles. Could be any projected round.
I was surprised that he went back to school and after a really good 2024 and followed up with a real strong 2025, and that's Gabe Akis, Illinois edge rusher. I will pound the table for him. I think
Nice.
he is the Brandon Graham replacement. I think he's the guy that you want to have, and I think he's a potential glue guy and in the edge rushing room. You need someone to win with power. You need someone to win with their hands and be very violent at the point of attack. You need someone that's going to come in and do the dirty work, especially in the run game where you don't have to take them off the field. You don't have to, you know, walk down, a fifth person at the line of scrimmage. Like you want someone that can be disruptive and as both as a pass rusher and a run defender. And man, he's having a really, really strong week this week. And he looks exactly like the player that you saw on tape. He's heavy-handed. He's a guy that has some ability to move well on the outside shoulder. He's a guy that, I just feel really comfortable in an edge class that there are some guys that you feel pretty good about. There's some ones that you're projecting a little bit. I think for the Eagles, you need guys that you know can contribute right away. You don't want any more guys that feel like you need to develop a little bit. And I think he matches the NFL physicality. I think he's more of a throwback defensive end. Talking to him, he feels like he's more of a 4-3 defensive end versus an outside linebacker. But if you need to reduce him down inside, he's able to do it. If you need him to kick out and kind of be that end man on the line of scrimmage, he can do it. So I really hope, the Eagles are certainly interested in him. And with the run that the Illinois defense has had in producing NFL players, I think he's one of the next ones to be a really great NFL player.
Well, that is quite a plug you just gave for him. If I was Howard Roseman, I believe you said you had me sold. Gabe Akis from Illinois, am I correct?
Yep.
Very nice. Somebody who could even reduce inside when Vic gets into his funky fronts. We could use that. You had me at BG, by the way. Let's check the next category. Best performers, which we've already touched on several of these guys. You can name as many or as few guys as you like.
Yeah, this one is more of an interesting one just because I feel like the American group edge rushers, you can just give the edge to. Gabe Akis, Derek Moore, and what they were able to do. TJ Parker also has had a really good week, and I think he's recaptured some of his first round buzz coming into the week. Genning Stunker, the Iowa offensive lineman, has done some nice things this week for himself. Played right tackle at Iowa, but I think he's more of an offensive guard. He's even talked about wanting to snap the ball and get some center reps in his arsenal. And I think he's a guy that is going to intrigue an NFL team no matter what, whether it's a tackle, whether that's guard. With that type of flexibility, I think the Eagles will all be interested in what he can do. Kyle Weiss, the Pitt linebacker, want to give him a shout out. I don't think he's a guy that is going to be a traditional linebacker. He's pretty small, and probably not a true interior linebacker player, but he flies downhill. He makes plays and coverage. He's really all over the place when you're watching the film back for Senior Bowl, and he's had a really strong week as well. And then, I think overall, gotta re-mention Tyron Montgomery and what he was able to do this week. But I also want to give a shout out to running back Mike Washington Jr., and he's a Arkansas running back. He had a really strong week. I really like his vision. I really like his determination to get vertical when he finds a hole, and he's done some nice things as a pass catcher too. So I would say all those guys to me have really stood out. And one more player I guess I could mention too is Sam Hecht, the Kansas State center. He's probably one of the few players that was able to actually stop and slow down Lee Hunter. Had some really good reps against them and just able to anchor against some power. So I think all those guys, deserve a shout out. And there's probably a list of 10, 12 guys that really helped themselves this week.
It's nice to hear that list. Sam Hecht, I watched his tape and he had me curious. We don't know what's going to be going on with Cam Jurgens' health. The Eagles tend to go for freaky traits, and Sam seems like a pretty good mover at center. They seem to like putting monstrous guards on either side. Of course, guards can move well too, but and have that mobile center in the middle. So I was a little concerned about his anchor, and for you to say that he showed some anchor this week against a very large human and powerful human at that, that's very interesting. Sounds to me like he's not going to last till day 3, but you never know. Sometimes centers do, and if the Eagles want insurance policy, that might be a way to go.
I think for centers, if you are a center only type player, I think that is where you typically end up as on early day 3.
Yeah.
But if you're a guy that can play multiple interior spots, I think you have a little bit more flexibility and your draft range is a little more conducive to going on day 2. And I think for Hecht, he's probably a center only, in my opinion. So I think day 3 is not out of the question for him.
Agree. He does seem like a center-only guy to me. I got to say, Tyron Montgomery, not only just him, but all these guys at the event, but to me, Tyron Montgomery is the prime example. Kudos to the Senior Bowl staff for finding all this talent. The NFL has their scouts all over the country working hard in-house and out-of-house. Folks like you are working hard all over the country on the NFL draft. But the Senior Bowl staff, they obviously were as well, and I got to give them a shout out. To find somebody like Tyron Montgomery, I would not have been surprised if he was an undrafted free agent if not for this event. So major kudos to them. Major kudos to you for all the knowledge you dropped today. I would like to ask one question. For first-time guests, I always ask, what draft jargon applies to you? Oily hips, quick in a phone booth, all that silly stuff. What would you say applies to you?
Yeah, I would say glue guy. Played tight end and fullback in college. For me, it just was always about doing what was needed. And I came in and I was like 220, 225 pounds. And they wanted me to gain some weight and put on some weight and muscle and bulk up to 250. But then they changed up the offense and, it turned out to be more of an air raid style. And so I ended up like coming in at 250. I lost like almost 10, 15 pounds into camp, just from the nature of running so much and just so many routes run in the air raid offense. And then I ended up being like a 235-pound tight end / fullback. So yeah, I would say glue guy. I was just doing whatever was necessary. I didn't even know that fullback was going to be a part of our offense. So I would say glue guy is my jargon.
Well, every strong team needs their glue guys. You've been a glue guy for Lindenwold University football. You've been a glue guy for draft fans, for Eagles fans, for the Philadelphia Inquirer. Hats off to you. Hats off to the glue guys. Thank you very much for coming on.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on. And yeah, looking forward to chatting again sometime soon.
All right, sounds great, man. Take it easy and go Birds.
Fiscally responsible, financial geniuses, monetary magicians. These are things people say about drivers who switch their car insurance to Progressive and save hundreds. Because Progressive offers discounts for paying in full, owning a home, and more. Plus, you can count on their great customer service to help when you need it, so your dollar goes a long way. Visit Progressive.com to see if you could save on car insurance. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary. Not available in all states or situations.
Support for this show and the Fans First Sports Network comes from Strong Coffee Company. Elevate your coffee routine with Strong Coffee Company's Black Instant Blend and Lattes. Both feature organic coffee, protein, MCTs, and adaptogens for sustained energy and mental clarity. With quick delivery and exceptional taste, their coffee is a convenient option and a nutritious addition to your daily routine. Experience a healthier, most productive day with Strong Coffee Company. Visit strongcoffeecompany.com and receive 20% off at checkout using promo code FFSN. Again, strongcoffeecompany.com, FFSN.